All right, folks, we are officially recording. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's WellSense Health Plan sponsored Teaching Kitchen class. My name is Paige, and I am a virtual culinary educator and registered dietitian with the Boston Medical Center Teaching Kitchen. I am our virtual culinary educator, so I'm coming to you live from my own kitchen, my teaching kitchen, to bring some delicious, easy, simple recipes to you in your kitchen. This recipe is a pretty great example of a balanced meal. And we're also going to embrace August, which is peach season, by making a simple cobbler with a bit of a more nutrient-dense twist. So, like I said, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. Wait till the end to come off mute, but we're going to go ahead and kick it off with some kebab prep. So we are doing a chicken and vegetable kebab. What I have here is some chicken breasts. And just for the sake of food safety and kind of keeping things more clean in my kitchen, I'm going to go ahead and use gloves while I prepare my chicken breast. So what we're doing is we're making kebabs, which if you're familiar with a kebab, you might have seen them with wooden sticks, with metal sticks. This is a really, dated meal. Many countries might have claimed that they might have started this, but generally, these began as a way to roast meats on a stick or some type of skewer, roasted over coals or over a fire. We have taken different spins on it. In this case, we are adding not just meat, but we're adding some vegetables, and we're going to marinate our meat. So different cultures, different areas around the world have their different spin on kebabs. You might have seen it spelled K-E or K-A. But generally, usually it's some type of meat, vegetable, marinated on a skewer of some sort. So for this recipe, we are using chicken breasts. You can really make your kebabs however you would like, whatever protein you like. You could just skip a protein in general and you could just do vegetables and roast them on the grill. I am using chicken today. And when cutting your chicken into chunks, you want to think about the sizes they need to be to cook evenly. So you want to cut them into equal size parts so that way they cook evenly on that skewer. Same with our vegetables. Any cut of chicken really will work here. I am using chicken breast, which is a leaner cut of protein. You could go in with something like steak. You could even do lamb. I don't think tofu would hold out very great over a grill through a kebab just because it's not a very sturdy protein choice to begin with. But you absolutely could try something like tempeh. Or you could kind of do like a different take on the kebab and basically do a stir fry if you were thinking some tofu. Do your tofu in your pan and do your vegetables on your stick. All right, so we have all of our meat here. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the sink and wash my hands with warm soapy water since I went ahead and I touched raw chicken here, trying to keep my workspace nice and clean. All right, so now to embrace those flavors of the Mediterranean, we're going to go ahead and make a quick marinade before we dice up these peppers. We're going to make a Greek marinade a nice Greek dressing and marinate that chicken for about 15 minutes before we skewer it. So let me just make sure I pull my measurements up before I start adding. All right, so we are going to need some Dijon mustard, red wine vinegar, some oil, lemon juice, and oregano. So we're going to go in with about half a teaspoon of dried oregano. I like to eyeball it. We need about 1 teaspoon of Dijon mustard. About a teaspoon there. We're going to go in with about 2 tablespoons of oil, 2 tablespoons of red wine vinegar. And we're going to do about half of a lemon. This is a pretty small lemon, so we might just do the whole thing. I'm actually going to throw another glove on. I have a cut on this hand. Now, this meal is going to be a great source of protein as well as vitamins, minerals, and carbohydrates. Now, these non-starchy veggies that we're adding are not crazy high in carbohydrates. So if you wanted to pair it with like a rice, some people love pasta. I'm actually going to pair it with a couscous. Something like that would be a really great addition to really balance this out. And add a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper, about about a quarter of a teaspoon. All right, and I'm going to go in with my hand and give this a good massage. Last piece of chicken there. Getting this nice and coated. Beautiful. Now this would be a great dressing, even, if we wanted to pair it on top of the veggies as well. But we're going to try to marinate this chicken so that it gets a little tender. The acid in the lemon juice and the red wine vinegar is going to help allow some moisture to penetrate the inside of the chicken breast to really make it moist and tender. I'm going to set this in the fridge while we prepare the bell pepper. All right, I'm going to give this a good spritz since I lost some chicken up here, keeping that workspace clean with some disinfectant. And then I'm going to wash my hands again since we are done with that raw chicken. Practicing good kitchen safety usually requires a lot of hand washing, so don't be alarmed. All right, now we're going to prepare these peppers. I did prepare my onion ahead of time. Onion tends to make my eyes water, and I didn't want to be slowed down, so I just kind of got some chunks here. It was a very large onion. And it's cool because we are going to be doing a color from each of these vegetables. So we have a red bell pepper, orange, yellow, green, and a purple onion, or also known as a red onion. In this case, it's purple. When you cut these, you want to think about the size that you're going to want on your kebab. So don't do it too small, but don't do it too terribly thick. Whenever I'm working with produce, I like to have a little scrap bowl to the side there. This pepper was a bit easier to cut. I think kebabs are a really great way to kind of use up some of those veggies that could be a little too, soft. Sorry, I cut a little funky. We'll do that. Now, traditionally, these are made on some type of open flame, coals, a grill. You really could do this in the oven if you wanted to, whatever you have on hand. I have a super small grill outside. We're not going to necessarily grill these together, but I will start the grill and do them outside. These little end pieces will be snacks. If you have other vegetables in the fridge as well, you could add. I really do love that kebabs could be whatever veggies you want. I have done kebabs with mushrooms. Oh, I saw a little bug there. I'll say that I actually got this pepper from my garden. Little bug on the inside. I'll have to give this another good wash. I've done mushrooms. I've done pineapple. Be right back. I'm going to give this a quick rinse. Beautiful. Really, truly, any vegetables that you like work. All right, to the side. Oops. We're gonna take this opportunity to kind of get this cleaned up here. And then I'm gonna pull a plate over. I have about 1, 2, 3, 4 skewers. I could make more kebabs than that, I'm sure. But we will stick with our 4, and then perhaps I'll do the rest in a foil packet. All right, now I will say time is your friend with a marinade, but we do have that chicken coated, and that'll be nice because it's really going to seal in that flavor once it's on the grill. All right, let's see here. Okay, so our next step is assembling these kebabs, but we're actually going to go ahead and I'm going to run outside, start the grill. We'll give it about another 2 to 3 minutes, and then we'll go ahead and make our kebabs. So I will be right back. Hang tight. All right, as we let those grates heat up, I'm going to grab the chicken. I'm going to set this to the side. All right, and we have some kebabs to make. All right, I'm going to throw a glove on just to help with the chicken. I love using gloves in the kitchen, especially as someone who has longer nails. For my ladies out there that might have fingernails that are long or their nails painted, sometimes wearing gloves is just an added layer of safety. All right, so we're going to go ahead and make our kebab. So get our skewers, piece of chicken, do yellow, chicken. Let's do some onion. Get some good color here. Red. Chicken. Another piece. There's really not a right or wrong way to do this. That's why I love making kebabs. It's fun for the whole family, fun for yourself. And you'll notice you'll try to do a theme and then you might not have even amount of ingredients. So then you'll have to go back and double. Now I will say if you're going to touch the onion with the hand that touches the chicken or the rest of the peppers, they all need to be cooked. I would not save the raw if you've touched the chicken and touched that pile. Just some food safety advice. These are a really great way to make a balanced dinner in the summertime on the grill. I honestly just love kebabs when I'm not quite sure what to do with like meat and vegetables. If I'm kind of getting not lazy, but just not very inspired. And again, the key is to make them really thin. And you can see I'm going to have a lot of leftover here. So I'll probably add them all to an aluminum foil packet and add those right to the grill. Now, the benefit of these is that they can be right on the open flame, which is nice to get that nice char. The foil packet's going to be a bit more of a steaming situation. I even actually have a grill tray, so I could just add it right on that without doing the foil pack, and I can show you what I mean by that. But loving these colors right now. And remember, food safety, when we touch something raw, like a raw meat, any type of raw meat that needs to be cooked, if we touch something like a pepper that's then not going to be cooked, that's not food safety. So we're really cross-contaminating right now, knowing that we are going to cook all of this food. So that's fine why I can touch one and then the other. I could not then save these peppers for another dish.
How do
Because,
you adapt this to the oven,
ooh, great question, Tusi. So if you're going to
Ellie?
keep the skewers, you would just add them on a baking sheet, just like this. Probably bake 400 for about 10 to 15 minutes and go from there. If you were actually just going to skip the skewers because you didn't have it, I would honestly just take a pan and scatter these all around, making sure that they weren't on top of each other and evenly distribute them. Almost like a sheet pan meal, I would say. All right, you can notice that these are not necessarily squished, packed so tight because we want that heat to be able to go up in between them. But they are on there pretty well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and put these on the grill. Grill is at medium to medium high heat. They probably will need 5 to 8 minutes. So I'll be right back. I'm going to go pop these on the grill and then we'll add these to a grill plate and I'll grab that and show you. All right, folks, so this is my grill plate. This just sits right on top of the grill and the food doesn't fall through it. I'm going to give it a quick rinse because I did some vegetables on it the other day and it's still got some vegetable on the top here crusted down. But what we're going to do is just set everything right on top of this and this will just sit right on top of the grill. If I didn't have this, I would take tin foil and I'd make a little boat and I'd add all the veggies in one and the chicken in the other. All right, give that a quick rinse. Let's go ahead and just add these right on top. I have my plate underneath here because I'm going to put the chicken on here and the chicken still has some juices. Break up these onions. If you were doing this in the oven and you weren't using kebabs, you could absolutely even marinate the veggies in this dressing as well. And add this on here. Get these all
You don't have
spread.
you don't have to spray the grill tray with anything to stop them from sticking.
This grill tray has been kind of seasoned, I would say, so I don't need to spray it. but you absolutely could spray it prior. We do have some oil in this chicken marinade to kind of help. Sometimes it sticks, sometimes it doesn't. I generally don't like to add too much oil just because the grill has that open flame. If I add too much moisture, it drips down and makes those flames go a little crazy. All right, another good wash. My grill is actually not large enough for this to go on the same time that the kebabs are on there, so I'm actually just going to push it up here, and I'm going to give this a good spray with disinfecting spray. Spraying on the towel since I have food on the counter. All right, we're at a spot where I'm actually gonna pop out and check on the that there on the kebabs. Um, Great question, Kelly. They are higher up in the chat here. If you popped on after I added them, you might not see them. I think Deborah's adding them. Thank you, Deborah. All right, I'm gonna pop out and check the kebabs. I'm gonna take some tongs, and if they look like they need it, give it them a little kind of a twist so that the other side is going to be directly on the heat. So I will be right back. Sorry, folks, I was muted and I didn't even realize it. The kebabs looked great and I gave them just a quick turn. I'm gonna think about another 4 to 5 minutes and then we will add the chicken. I moved it over to another surface so we can start talking and working on our cobbler. So I'm gonna bring over some fresh peaches. We're gonna get those prepared for our cobbler. All right, so I have some peaches here. This recipe calls for, let's just double check before I tell you. I can't recall if it's peaches or per cups. All right, it is per peaches, so about 7 to 8 peaches. Medium yellow peaches. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 peaches. These are pretty large, so these will work just fine. I did cut a soft spot here. I like to take my peaches and cut them straight through the middle, give them a twist, pop that core out, and remove that in the peaches before I really get started. Bring my little workstation chair over. I have a small paring knife here. Now, if you're someone who really does not like peach skin, you absolutely could remove it prior to this. Before removing that core, make it a little bit easier. I find that I don't mind it in the cobbler. It kind of helps keep its form a little bit better. Just working it out with my fingers. These peaches are pretty large, so I might just start with 5 before I go to the 6th. Sometimes I need a little extra help from my knife to get that out. Peaches are in season right now, so they should be at your local markets. They should be at your grocery stores. And because, oop, this guy's has a little core issue here. They should be a little bit more inexpensive this time of year because they are in season. Just tear that right out. Our core split. Our pit, I'm sorry, our peach pit. Cutting around it there. Beautiful. And just a reminder for those of us who are doing the kabobs, we still want to maintain food safety, so we're cooking that chicken to 165 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, let's do these first. All right, so this is my baking dish. I'm going to give this a good spray. We're going to put the peaches once they're sliced right into this. The original recipe I had found for this that I wasn't sure if I sent everybody had used, I think, almond flour, or I couldn't remember if it was gluten-free. I checked the price of the ingredients. They were a little bit more expensive than I'd like, so I switched it to this recipe that just uses coconut sugar, some baking powder, and some whole wheat flour. Slicing these similar slices, try to get them as thin as you can.
Can you just use regular flour or you have to have these, I guess, flavored?
So I'm just going to use some whole wheat flour that the recipe calls for. If you're going to substitute other flours like an almond flour, I think gluten-free flour would be an equal swap, but a whole other flour type that's not wheat-based, I would look up another recipe that's meant for those just because they're not always a one-to-one swap. Their moistures are different, their proteins are different, protein content, I should say. So sometimes they don't always work the same. All right. We might have some extra here. I knew that these were larger peaches, so if that's the case, I will set them to the side and I will use them and dice them up for my lunches. They're looking beautiful. Maybe we'll do one more and I will save the extra for my lunches for some snacking. Beautiful. These are looking so good. So we added these right to the baking pan. We're going to set these to the side. All right, so for the first step of the recipe, we're going to preheat the oven, which I've already done. We preheat the oven to about 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Then we're going to go ahead and add some sugar right onto these. Now, the one thing I'll say about this recipe is that it is pretty heavy on sugar. So I like to take my own twist and kind of cut back the sugar. We can let the peaches speak for themselves. So instead of a half of a cup of sugar, I'm going to do about a fourth here. maybe even less. This is going to help them create a really nice syrup. I'm just going to go in with a spoon and give them a good mix. Let those peaches be coated. Now I'm working with a coconut sugar here. It's just supposed to be a little bit more glycemic index friendly, meaning it's not supposed to spike your blood sugar as aggressively as other sugar. In my philosophy, sugar is sugar. I just like working with coconut sugar sometimes. I like the flavor. I think it's really nice. It's comparable to a brown sugar. So if you have brown sugar, that would be a great substitute. I would do a powdered sugar, at least for this part and the cobbler in general. If you want a recipe that uses honey or maple, I would find a recipe that uses that again, because switching from a powder to a liquid could impact how the final product looks. I also noticed this recipe does not call for any cinnamon, and I think cinnamon is an essential ingredient in a cobbler, so we're actually going to add that in the topping. All right, so we're going to make our cobbler topping. Now need, where are we at here? Okay, 1 cup of whole wheat flour. We are going to do, where are we at here? 1 teaspoon of baking powder. We need a pinch of kosher salt. I'm going to add some cinnamon. I'm going to eyeball this, about a 1/2 teaspoon. And it calls for 3/4 cup of coconut sugar. That feels like a lot to me. So I'm actually just going to do, let's do a 1/2 cup. Forgot I left my 1/4 of a cup in there. Actually, you know what? We added a 1/4 here. Let's add a 1/4 here. Really, peaches are going to speak for themselves as they start to caramelize in that oven. And this is how we can adapt recipes. We can cut the sugar back. Now, sometimes you can't always cut the sugar back and yield the same product, especially in something like a cookie or a cake. I will say that. Now, this is a crumble-like topping, so you can definitely do that and it'll work. And now I'm just taking a peek at the clock. I am going to run out. I think our kebabs are done, so I'm going to pause this real quick. Our oven is preheated, and I'm going to go check on the kebabs. All right, folks, bear with me just 1 more minute. All right, so our kebabs are done. They're setting to the side there to cool and to rest. So we're going to finish this cobbler. We're going to get it in the oven, and then we'll bring our kebabs over. So what do we need here? Oh, we need some vanilla, and then we need a fourth of a cup of oil. Where are we at? Fourth of a cup, some vanilla. So about a teaspoon of vanilla. This is going to call for coconut oil. I don't think I have a fourth of a cup, so we're going to use another neutral oil like avocado oil. Right, adding it right into the bowl here. So I'm using avocado oil. A vegetable oil would work as well, even a butter. All right, so now we need to stir this until creamy and sticky. Sometimes smushing it together helps. Mixing it together as best we can. Sometimes if it still looks super dry, I might add a little bit more oil. I'm gonna add a smidge more. We wanted it a little bit more crumbly than this. Almost like a crumble topping. Now, I will say that this needs to cook for 45 to 50 minutes. So, if you are having this with your dinner, might not be a bad idea to prepare it ahead of time. All right, so now we're going to take it and we're going to just sprinkle around. Try not to add too much on top of each other. Now, I used an 8x8, not a 9x13, so I will not be able to use all this crumble it looks like, but that is okay. Sometimes it needs stirred around a little bit. We don't want it overly caked on top or it won't cook in the oven. So let's see here. All right, this is what it's gonna look like. So we're gonna set this to the side here. Just gonna clean up my workstation real quick before we get that final product. All right, now this is gonna go into the oven. All right, and here are our finished kebabs. Let me just give this a quick wipe down. I see lots of crumbs here. All right, so we have our kebabs here. You'll see that it's got like a nice open flame, a little char there. I did check the temperature of the chicken. We got to 165. Now these are metal, so they're hot, but we'll give you a quick little peek. You can still see that marinade on there. Really lovely. Now, say if we're doing these in the oven, you're not going to get those charred marks. That's okay. So we have our kebabs done. Whatever side we're going to make with them for dinner, we'll go ahead and start that a little bit prior, maybe now, but I'm not going to make everybody wait 45 or 50 minutes to see our cobbler. I have a final product already done. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that and we're going to take a peek. All right, so here is a finished cobbler next to our finished kebabs. Let me get a little bowl and we can scoop some out. Right, we'll do a plate so you can see. Now, I will say that I did this batch using frozen peaches because that's what I had on hand. Flatten out there. So you can see that the peaches cook down really nice. We got that crumble topping looking great. Now, because we got the sugar in this, we're letting those peaches really shine. I think this would pair beautifully with some Greek yogurt to up the protein, maybe a glass of milk. If you're feeling really excited and frisky, maybe a little bit of ice cream would pair beautifully with this. But I want to do a taste test of our kebab. So I'll get a pepper and a piece of chicken off. We'll do it this way. Do a little nibble this way. Mm. Really lovely marinade. A little tang from the mustard. Beautifully seasoned, not overcooked chicken. Absolutely would be great for a cookout. And so nutrient dense. Let's try an onion. Really delicious. Now, let's try our cobbler. And we'll just try it since we haven't had dinner yet. All right, so I want to make sure I get one of these peaches with some that crumb topping. Mm. This is absolutely delicious. I think cutting the sugar was the right choice. I can taste peach and not too crazy sweet. Mm. Really, really delicious. Nice and soft. The crumble topping is soft. I think this is absolutely a really nice, simple, more nutrient dense cobbler since we are using whole wheat flour. We're kind of upping the protein there. We're upping the whole grains, a little bit more vitamins and minerals. I see Tusi said, where's the sauce? Is that for the kebabs? All right, I do see that the kebabs have, you could make a tzatziki on the side, but because we did two recipes, I did not make a sauce. Um, if you wanted to do a tzatziki sauce with it, I believe there might be one embedded in here. It's not in the main ingredient. It just says served with tzatziki sauce. So you could make that on the side. That's some Greek yogurt, some dill, some fresh cucumber. I opted not to just because we had a lot of recipes going on here, but you could absolutely add that tzatziki sauce to dip. But how I would serve these is I would take them and I'd remove them off the skewer, pair with your sauce if you'd like, or honestly, any sauce that you enjoy, and eat up. Anyone else have any other questions about the recipe?
I know I was a little late in the beginning, but did you marinate the veggies at all or just put them on straight?
I did not. I just marinated the chicken and added the veggies directly onto the skewer. You definitely could add them to that marinade, but I would suggest doubling it if you did.
Okay.
There's really not a right or wrong way to do kebabs, but if you're going to use a leaner cut of protein like a chicken breast, a pork tenderloin, a marinade goes a long way because they tend to dry out quickly.
Did the peaches have anything other than the sugar on them
Yeah, great
prior to?
question. So just the sugar, we just toss them in the sugar, but you could absolutely add the cinnamon there. Sometimes they have you do an acid, but every recipe is different. I don't think that this is, my top number one cobbler recipe, but I think it's less ingredients. We're sneaking in some whole grains, cutting back the sugar a little bit. Definitely worked well.
Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Kelly said, how long do you think the kebabs cooked on the grill in total? Kelly, I'd say maybe 10 minutes. I have one of those grills that doesn't really have a dial for the temperature. I just leave it at the highest amount. It is a pretty It's a pretty small grill. Like my surface here is bigger than the surface of the grill. I will say that. So it's not very high tech. But just keeping your eye on it if you notice things starting to get charred. I love this digital thermometer from Amazon. It was about 10 bucks. I always pop it in the chicken just to test it so I can get used to what it looks like when it's cooked. But great question. All right, I think that was all the questions. I am going to go ahead and end the recording in case anybody else wants to ask something off camera. So thank you, Well Sense, for sponsoring today's class. We will see everybody next time.